In this video, I'm just going to go over a procedural dungeon maker using UE4 blueprints that I made. And basically what this does is it uses a combination of room definitions, a 2D grid system, and a recursive algorithm to make all the corridors and everything else. One other thing that I have in here as well, if you notice the color coding, is I'm actually going ahead and assigning a unique color to each corridor just for visual representation, making sure that they all connect. So because it is a 2D grid system, you'll notice a lot of like waffles and everything else. So I'm going to cover that later, but right now I'm going to focus on the rooms. So basically I have a shortcut key right here for redoing this. So if I go ahead and reset it, it's going to clear it out, and then I can make a new system. Alright, so it went ahead and made a new system, and if you notice, every time the rooms are actually staying in the same position, but it's making new corridors. And with the current settings right now, I actually do have a tracker in top left telling me how long it's taking to actually make the whole room and everything else. So about a little under a half a second. It's not too terrible. I mean, there's not much geometry in this anyways, but it's mostly, to parse through all of the 2D grid system and everything else. It's not too bad. I'm happy with it. So basically what's going on is it has an option for either manual placement of rooms or a random placement. So right now, if I go ahead and close out, you actually see that everywhere there's a room, I have this little grid pattern. This is a simple little blueprint where you can actually just drag and drop squares in there to make a predefined room. And essentially it's cyan for a room floor, gray says never fill this position, and then yellow is actually a doorway. So the blocks that you did see standing up are actually doors, and it's also the launching point for the procedural system. So anywhere that there's a door is a launch point for the corridors. And the reason why some are very large and others are very small is actually making each corridor one at a time. So for example over here, this lighter purple that's very short, and also the maroon on the other side, or the fuchsia rather, they're very small because the purple and the pink were already made. So they already filled that whole area. There's not much for the smaller ones to do because the spot's already taken up on the grid. So that's what's going on there. And I can actually go ahead and change the option for manually placing rooms. So if I disable this, it will randomly place the rooms every time. So the rooms can end up anywhere in the grid entirely. So that big room is over there, and the other one is somewhere. So I can go ahead and reset it. And this is like the major danger of making everything so random, and why I put the manual in there of sometimes it might not always connect. It has to deal with your settings on the corridor system, and also just where it decides to plop it down. So it won't always work, but for a fair number of them, it should be pretty good. Alright, so that's what's going on here, and it has certain settings as well for the grid size and how large this whole system is. So if I go ahead and make this really big, heck why not, and maybe I use a lot of connection tree depth, if I make this really long, basically this is saying, how far does each corridor go. It's very short right now, only 23, and random is not my friend right now. Let me go ahead and manually place that. Right now it's set to 23, so it gets very small definitions. However, if I go ahead and set this up to 247, which is actually right at the threshold of max recursive depth in UE4 by default, this will actually take a little bit longer, obviously. But in just under 3 seconds, we got this giant, vast corridor system we can just get lost in. And so you can actually play with, how far can the corridors go, how large is the entire system, and also change the settings for the corridor itself. Like right now I get a lot of waffles going on, basically an artifact of using a 2D grid system for all of this. However, if I change the option for connecting paths to be very low, which is this slider, and also in terms of connecting to other corridors, I can go ahead and start to get more random features in here. So I also have an option for killing sections and how far back it's going to kill. So this will empty out a few spots and just make sure it gets more random. So a combination of these different effects will start to get more interesting mazes. So right now, just changing those few sections, we have a few empty spots here and there. And we start to see that it's no longer representing a waffle anymore. Now we're actually getting some real randomization in there. And even a giant system like this, if I go ahead and reset it, let's see how long this actually takes to spawn everything. About a second and a half. And that's not really too terrible for how large everything is. But that just kind of goes to show that you can actually get this giant empty this vast system essentially really quickly. So if I go ahead and change the chance to kill it's a little bit higher, or maybe I kill more sections of it, we'll start to get a little bit different results of just empty spots and everything else. So you can start to see we start to get some empty spots going on in here, and it just makes things more interesting. So there's a bunch of different options in here, and just wanted to kind of show an overview of this procedural dungeon system.